So remember I said up until maybe 10 or 15 years ago, when you heard midlife crisis, it was about men. Now, when I hear midlife, the first thing I think about is women. Now, I am a woman, so maybe that's what I'm prone to do anyway, but it's really being talked about more. What if there are things we never had the opportunity to learn? We've all been to school or training, but there are things they never taught us that actually make a powerful difference in life. I'm here to share with you all the pieces you've been missing: mindset, health, success, and more, and we'll all learn together from guests along the way. We may not have learned it the traditional way, but oh my goodness, let's keep learning how to do things differently. OMG, hello Teach Me crew. Thank you for being back with me again this week. I am really intrigued by what we're going to talk about today. And I guess by we, I mean me. We've done many different topics circling around midlife. We've talked about strength training. We've talked about weight gain, hormone replacement therapy, feeling worthy. I'm going to give you in the show notes a Spotify playlist so that you can easily find every episode related to midlife if you'd like. And I'm trying to figure out a way to do that with an Apple Podcast playlist. I'm not sure whether I can or not, so check the show notes and see if I figured it out. But I want to do a big picture today because something exciting is coming in terms of OMG Teach Me coaching and the community that is coming this fall. And I want you to see why I feel so focused on women in midlife and why I feel like this is such a powerful time that we can really turn around how we're feeling about where we are in life. So let me start by giving us all the big picture. What is this midlife thing that is the topic of so many social media posts and articles all over the place? If you search it, there's videos, there's articles, everything. Well, first of all, here's something interesting. As I did a little bit of research on this, the idea of a midlife crisis up until maybe the past 10 years was really a term that was reserved for men. And as soon as I read that, of course, I remembered that. Because do you remember it was always stories about how the guy reaches 40 and buys the sports car, or leaves the marriage and finds the young secretary, or, does a new hairdo or a toupee or whatever. You know what I mean? That was the term midlife crisis. It applied to men really up until recently. There wasn't any focus on women in midlife. And isn't that the story of so many things? But it really just made me pause when I read and recognized that and realized that I'm so happy, first of all, that we're talking about these things. Because when our mothers and grandmothers were at this stage in their life, we weren't talking about these things. So right there is a win. The more that we bring things into the light, to steal the title of a Lucy Score book, I think, the better. So that's the first thing. Used to be all about men. Now, the next thing is, what is this period of time? What are we actually talking about when we say midlife? Well, interestingly, I found an article from The Atlantic back in 2014. There was a study done really just asking people to report their well-being on a scale of 1 to 10. So they're just assigning this number 1 to 10. How happy are they with their life? What's their well-being? 1 to 10. Okay, totally self-reported. And at all different ages, they asked people this, and then they graphed it. And there was absolutely a dip. And I'm showing it with my hand. I realize you can't see me. There was absolutely a dip right in the 50 to 53 range. So it was higher. I think the highest was 7, mostly in the 6s through the earlier years, dipping down to 4-ish, coming back up after, though, interestingly, and getting right back to where it was, 6s as high as 7 later in life. So there's another piece of good news in the big picture, is that most people, while they reported less happiness, lower feeling of well-being, I don't even know how to say what that is. They gave themselves a lower score in the 50 to 53 age range, which is where I am actually. And then the numbers went up. So a little positive note for you there. The numbers are going to go up. And the author of the article said, well, at least it wasn't just down, 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 right? Then what do we have to look forward to? So I want you to remember this when you're finished listening to this episode. Then the numbers went up. Okay, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Now, interestingly, those of us who are in this midlife, I'm going to say mid 40s to 60-ish range right now, we are Gen X. And I just love Instagram and TikTok, all the stuff about Gen X. Yes, we are tough. Yes, we didn't have it easy. Yes, we didn't have the technology. But let's talk about what kind of created us in terms of being Gen X. So interestingly, I read one article that said this generation, Gen X, often struggles with money stories. And of course, you've heard me talk about this. It's been a recent episode that was really popular. I'll put that one in the show notes for sure so that you can easily grab it and listen. That was episode 71. So some of what's been going on in the world may have created some of these money stories, particularly for Gen X. And I thought this was a really good point. And my major in college, by the way, was mathematical economics. So I love this stuff. But anyway, let's just keep it simple. So in the late 70s, when we were kids of varying ages, the economy was not doing great. There was stagflation, there were lines to get gas, and maybe, even if we were young kids, maybe the stress of that may have, been part of our story, become part of our mental picture of the world. And then this article rightly pointed out that a lot of us were entering the job market in the early 90s. There was a recession at that time. So when you're job hunting in a recession, it's not so easy. Or even maybe the younger end of Gen X in the late 90s, and around 1999 to 2001, the tech bubble was bursting. So there was another bit of recession. Now, of course, recession is a cyclical thing. It will happen again, and then it will happen again, and then the economy comes back, and then it happens again. But we may have hit it just right so that there were some kind of life-defining moments happening as the economy didn't feel super great. And so that, again, gets into your picture of the world. And so Gen X has kind of hit this a few times, and maybe we start to think that money feels hard to come by or easy to lose. It slips through our fingers. And if some of those stories are getting buried in there, then that kind of adds to our struggle, right? Whenever we face uncertainty or face, as we will, another recession or worry about retirement money, some of these stories might be kind of making our worry even more impactful, let's say. Now, also, I found that Gen X, as an age group, we tend to carry more debt than any other age group. And I don't know why I didn't look into it that far, but let's think about it for a minute. If we're sending kids to college costs are so much higher now, of course, than they used to be. My husband and I sent 2 kids to college. We did pay for it, but a lot of kids are going on loans. I went to grad school on loans, but a lot of kids are going to undergrad on loans, and it's really tough, of course, to get out and get a job and have to pay those loans. And oftentimes parents are left with almost no savings afterwards because they put it all towards college. That's a tough scenario. And statistics say that more than 50% of us as a Gen X have less than $50,000 saved for retirement. And that's going to bring a rough road, right? How are we going to pay for whatever care we need when we are in retirement? Or how are we going to just pay for having a fun retirement after all these years of working? There really overall for us also has been, just think of the change, such a massive change from our childhood in the 70s and 80s to now in technology, in the way the world works, in the way people relate to each other. And maybe some of it is better, and I would have to say some of it is not necessarily better, but just massive change that we've seen over this period of time. So all of that is just to kind of give us a big picture of who are we as we hit midlife around this period of time. Now, of course, there are exceptions. Of course, there are people who never had financial struggles and don't have that money story. Or there are people who didn't have kids and didn't have the college cost worry, and there was a different challenge. So I'm not saying this applies to everyone, but as a generation, those are kind of the big picture things that have shaped us. Okay, so we got the big picture now. What is actually midlife? What do we mean when we say midlife women struggle with this and that? Well, it could have to do with kids growing up, empty nest, talk a little bit about that. It could have to do with aging parents and everything that comes along with that. We'll talk a little bit about that. Could have to do with your relationship with your spouse or significant other. We'll talk about that. And it could have to do with your body and physical issues that you're facing in midlife. So we'll talk about that as well. So first of all, kids growing up, empty nest. I will tell you, both my kids are now out of college and out doing their thing. They have jobs. They do not live in my local area. They live where they want to live, and I'm so proud and excited for them. And at the same time, empty nest, even after having them away in college for years and years, hit me harder, even now, because now they're really away, right? Now they're really not coming back. And of course, they're coming back to visit. I'm not saying they're not coming back at all, but this is at some point going to start feeling like where they used to live and not their home anymore. And that, whether it happens when kids go away to college or whether after college, when it really hit me even more, that is what we mean when we talk about empty nest. So your kids may be younger or you may not have kids, but you may have seen other people go through this and deal with this. This can hit us in a lot of different ways, and it tends to be in this kind of 50-ish time frame, maybe a little younger, maybe a little older, but around this midlife time frame. And maybe we feel like, did we do a good job? And we wonder, are my kids struggling because I didn't do something right? Or if they're doing really well, we worry. Is everything going to keep going well? I can't do anything about it. It's hard for a parent or even an aunt or a grandparent if you've been really, really involved in raising kids, and now they're their own person and they may come to us for advice, but we are not in charge and they get to choose whether they listen to us or even ask for advice. That's a big switch when you're used to being in charge and maybe even working your day and your routine around taking care of these kids and helping them and being in charge of them. So it is a big, big, big mental shift, even if they are doing really well. And of course, if they're not, then so many worries and struggles come along with that. And then some of us may have our 20-something adult kids living at home. Some of us may not. Now, we've talked about comparison before, but I think that is where the comparison trap happens when you're talking about empty nest. And I think we need a whole podcast episode on this, on empty nest. But for now, I think comparison gets us here because my kids are living away in other cities, exactly where they want to be. What if I look at someone whose kids came back home and I think, well, did my kids not want to come back home? Why is that? And vice versa. What if your kids are back home and they're still living with you? And maybe you look at other people whose kids are not living at home and you think, well, did I do okay? Are they not doing what they should be doing as young adults? We can compare and we can make up stories about everything, right? And hopefully they're doing what the right thing is for them in all of these scenarios. There's no right or wrong, right? It's right for them. That's the key. So the comparison trap really does get us. And I think for moms all the way through life, don't we almost fall into comparison traps about everything related to our kids? But here's the last one, right? The empty nest one. So that's one thing that we're dealing with in midlife that can be really tough mentally. When I sat down to talk about hormone replacement therapy with naturopathic Dr. Gina Nick, that was episode 73, I didn't realize that not only would I learn more about that topic, I would also learn about an easy way to detox and supplement that can even help with hormone balance. Dr. Gina developed Best Daily Ever, and I have been enjoying them ever since we taped that episode. I'm not going to say no to antioxidants and nutrients, including and glutathione that support my immune system, energy, hormone balance, and overall wellness. Find Best Daily Ever at www.omgteachme.com/recommendations and try them for yourself. Then we have potentially aging parents and a lot of tough issues that come along with that. So my parents and my husband's parents are both living. One of the four is really ill with a chronic disease, and that has been a major struggle. The others are doing well. And at the same time, we know that they won't be around forever, right? And so there's a lot of mental stress and concern that goes along with that. And you might be in a situation where you're taking care of one or two aging parents at the same time as taking care of kids. And you're kind of pulled in both directions and feeling like you can't be everything for everyone, but you're really trying to. That's what they call the sandwich generation when that happens. So a lot can come along with that. And it takes a little bit of time to kind of work out how that's going to go, how you're going to be able to do it, what's the best thing for your parents? How can you help them best? Where should they be? All of that. Really tough decisions that have to be made at this time. Now, you also potentially have been in a relationship for a long time. And when the kids leave the house, now this is definitely part of empty nest as well, you're going to kind of find out how's your relationship doing. Maybe it's great. Maybe suddenly you realize when it's just the two of you that you kind of lost touch with each other a little bit. And I did an episode on midlife relationships, and it was really helpful advice. So again, that'll be in the show notes. Really helpful advice. And that's a whole nother piece that you want to focus on at this time if you want that relationship to continue. So am I piling on, right? The empty nest, the relationship, the parents, the kids. Then comes our bodies. And a few episodes we've done relate to this. And so I'll just refer to those. And again, check the show notes, grab them. But our bodies are changing. And let me just give you a little humorous spin on this first. So I think it's Ali Siddiq, if I remember correctly. He is a comedian, and if you Google it, you'll see it. He does a little bit about people in their 40s, and I don't remember the setup to it, but he's climbing up on a chair, and he's saying how you do it in your 40s versus how you do it when you're younger. And he puts one foot and then he puts the other foot and he's careful. And then when he's coming down, he puts one foot and he says, pause. And we joke in my house a lot about pause because when you're in midlife, it is easier to hurt yourself, isn't it? And maybe you're laughing along with me. So in my head is him saying, pause. I'll go to my bar class and I'll be instructed to jump doing whatever. And I don't jump. This is one thing that I just don't do because I am too prone to hurting myself if I jump. So, there are things like that happen in midlife to our bodies, and we can learn how to work with that. And we can learn how to do things the way that is healthy and safe for us. And at the same time, that's an adjustment that we're making amongst all this other stuff. We're making this adjustment to make sure that physically we're okay. We're not hurting ourselves. Now, also, if you're in the same age group with me, you know that you can hurt yourself sitting in one place too long or drying off after your shower or stretching in the morning or pretty much anything. If you do it slightly too quickly or at the wrong angle, sometimes you're going to tweak or twist or pull something. And, we just try to be careful, and we just try to know some stretches, to stay flexible, to know what we should and shouldn't do. Now, another thing is a lot of women at this time do have more time because not as many people in the house maybe, or not as many people just needing our oversight all the time. So maybe we do get in shape. Maybe we do start eating healthy. Maybe we do start exercising. But sometimes it's a little bit of a strange thing because in our 50s, in some social situations, we can still feel a bit invisible because we're just like a little bit older than the people who really get the attention, if you know what I mean. So while we want to really feel good in our skin, I'm in the best shape I've been in for I don't know how long, probably since I got married. And at the same time, sometimes I feel a little invisible. So that's just another thing mentally that we're figuring out. And the key here, I think, in terms of taking care of your body, getting fit if you want to, getting healthier if you want to, now that you have the time to do that, is to be doing it for you. Doing it so that you can feel good in your skin and not doing it for anybody else. That's the key, because then you continue to be able to feel good in your skin and you continue to want to do whatever it is you're doing. I think that really has to be about that. Now, in terms of physical, here's where I suppose some of these other things could apply to men as well as women to a certain extent. Here's where we differ. And I'm sure you know what I'm going to say, that we've had a couple of episodes about topics related to perimenopause and menopause. And this is where just a whole host of things can be going on. Mood swings, weight changes, brain fog, hot flashes, the whole thing. And different people will get different sets of symptoms. It might last 10 or 15 years. It might be much shorter than that, but it's going to hit us all in some way or another. And so that sort of on top of all these other things that are going on right now can sometimes almost feel like our body is our enemy. And, mindset wise, that's kind of the opposite of what we want to think. We want to be trying to feel really good in our body, and we want to be putting our best foot forward in the world and having a self-image that says, I am being fully me. And if we feel like our body's our enemy, kind of out to get us, then you can see how that sort of goes in conflict with the ideal scenario there. So there's a lot going on at this period of our lives, and it's okay if sometimes it feels really hard and overwhelming. If you are reaching a point where you feel like, I might be facing depression, I'm not sure, this might be too much, please do consider getting help, because there are so many amazing counselors and therapists out there, doctors who can talk with you about hormone replacement therapy. Listen to that episode as well. Please do get help if you are really, really struggling. And let's kind of wrap this up by looking at, what are some of the positive things that are happening related to midlife in that big picture world where I gave you, why is this hard? What are some of the good things? Number one, we are talking about these issues a lot more. So remember I said up until maybe 10 or 15 years ago, when you heard midlife crisis, it was about men. Now, when I hear midlife, the first thing I think about is women. Now, I am a woman, so maybe that's what I'm prone to do anyway, but it's really being talked about more. So I know there are people who would love to help you if you're really struggling. And if you're just feeling like, this isn't the easiest period of life, there's this podcast. There's other podcasts as well. There's so many resources out there to help us, and even just it's become okay to have conversations about this with our friends. It's okay to talk about what we're struggling with. And I think that's such a positive development. We talk about these issues a lot more now. And almost every time when we are looking for a way to shift our mindset about something and change the beliefs we have buried deep in ourselves, in our subconscious, the first step is recognizing that. And what's going to help us to recognize it is to talk about it. Because sometimes things come out of our mouths that we don't even realize we were thinking. I don't know if that's ever happened to you. You're in a conversation, you say something, you go, oh, didn't realize I was going to say that, but that tells me something. I also think for Gen X, it's a good thing that we're maybe not quite as susceptible to what I would call the influencer movement on social media. We're on social media, and we weren't when we were kids. And so I do think we know how to put it down maybe more easily than some people who are younger. And I think we understand, even if we don't necessarily follow our own advice, but we understand the importance of not comparing ourselves. So let me just underscore that again for you. Whatever you see on social media is the highlight reel of someone's life or someone's trip or someone's thoughts. And if it's entertaining you, if it's lifting you up, if it's helping you get through a hard time, if it's good advice, then that's great. If it's making you feel bad because you are comparing yourself and thinking, well, gosh, her kids are better and her life is better and she does everything better, I say unfollow those people. Not that they're bad people, but you want to watch what's influencing you and make sure it's a positive thing for you. If you are getting into this comparison mode, unfollow whatever it is that's making you feel lacking compared to someone else. Know how to put it down and go out and do something. Now, 2 things as we wrap up. Number 1, why does the happiness level go back up after the early to mid 50s? Well, probably because we get the hang of all these things I've talked about. If you have more time in your life, here's what I want to remind you of. You also have a lot of experience and a lot of wisdom that comes from dealing with a lot of challenges. And so trust yourself and think about, well, if I have the time, what do I really want to do? Do I want to leave my mark on something? Do I want to get involved in a sport? I did an episode about that with Lisa Alfano, who is amazing. Maybe I want to get involved in a charity. You have so much time ahead of you that you can leave your mark on something that you really love. Maybe you want to get healthier and get more fit. Maybe you want to be better about staying in touch with friends and family. You have more time, maybe, to do these things, and being around and in communication with people, being fit, having activities to do, and having a purpose is how those happiness numbers come back up. So try those things. And guess what? If you don't like something you try, you don't have to do it anymore. Do something else. Amazing. That feels so freeing, doesn't it? And the other thing I'll tell you is you are my people. And I am launching right now, this fall, the beta version of the Leading Lady community for you. This beta period this fall for a couple of months is going to be totally free. It's going to be a Facebook group. Grab the link in the show notes to go and check it out, look at the information, and join me. bit.ly/leadingladyenergy is the link. I'll put it in the show notes. And then the full launch is going to happen at the end of this year separately. So if you're in the beta community, we're going to be doing group coaching. We're going to be doing some training from me and a few guests as well. We're going to have a book club continuing with books that I'm going to let you vote on as to what we do as the next one, and some informal chats, as well as some other things that I'll give you along the way. And then I'm going to want your feedback because this is a beta. We're going to figure out what are the things that midlife women are really wanting. What are the things that really help you have that main character energy, make decisions that are going to help you through this period of life. Learn how to trust your intuition. Learn how to grow your confidence. Learn how to feel like you're putting your best foot forward every time you go out into the world. That's the goal. So if that sounds good to you, come join me. And then you'll also, of course, hear about all the information when we launch full out at the end of this year as well. Can't wait. Okay, last thing today. I am adding to the Nostalgia OMG Teach Me playlist, St. Elmo's Fire by John Parr. I actually went to grad school in Georgetown. You may or may not know this, but the bar that St. Elmo's Fire was based on is called The Tombs. It's in Georgetown, still there. And I've always loved that song. So reminds me of college, reminds me of grad school, and has just great memories attached to it. So there's your next song on the Nostalgia OMG Teach Me playlist. Make sure to check it out on Spotify and Amazon Music, and I'll see you again soon. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. OMG, did you know that we have mini episodes every Friday as well? Make sure to follow OMG Teach Me in your favorite podcast app so you get all the goodies. And if you're just finding this podcast and you're kind of wondering where to start, I have a curated mini series for you to help you stop self-sabotaging, because we all do it. So head over to www.omgteachme.com and sign up when you get the pop-up box. We may not have learned all these things in school, but they sure are powerful now.